that you open up our minds through your Spirit, reveal your truth to us as we discuss your word. In the mighty name of Yeshua Mashiach. Amen.
Amen.
All right, so today, as I said, we're going to basically go through 3 Torah portions, but just briefly carry on where we started last week. So I didn't want to leave you hanging there without some evidence. When I did this Torah portion, I didn't elaborate on the 3rd ark, as I mentioned last week. But I did put the scriptures in here in the notes. So basically the theme is the same, carrying the ark through the wilderness and the Levites, the 3 sons. But in this Torah portion, I just laid it all out, how they traveled. So it's important to know this in order to see or the evidence of the 2nd ark, or where the ark was actually placed. So the first 3 tribes, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun, they led the group of people. And Deuteronomy 10:33 says, "And they departed from Mount of Yahweh 3 days' journey, and the ark of the covenant went before them 3 days' journey to search out a resting place for them." So this is referring to Judah, who was in front, who traveled ahead of the other tribes 3 days' journey. And so with them, they carried the ark. Now, when you read this Torah portion, it contradicts actually what it says about Kohath, who carried the ark of the covenant and the furnishings, because three tribes down, Reuben, Simeon, and Gad, is in between Levi, which is Gershon, and Levi Merari, which carried the curtains and the pillars. So the Ark of the Covenant, if you look at the 12 tribes, it's exactly right smack in the middle of what do you call it? Procession, yes. And so the confirming verses that confirm that is where Moses was asked to come up the mountain again. And it says, "You for yourself 2 tablets of stone, like the first, come up to me on the mountain and make yourself an ark of wood. And I will write on the tablets the words that were on the first tablets, which you broke, and you shall put them in the ark." So I made an ark of acacia wood. So this is Moses making the ark. And the ark that was made by shittim wood was made by Bezalel in Exodus 37. So Numbers is basically, or Deuteronomy, is a repeat of the Torah. Deuteronomy is the Greek word Deuteronomium, that means duo nomos, which means 2 laws or 2nd law, or the repeat of the law. So basically Deuteronomy repeats what happened in Exodus, but there's different information here that basically give you more insight into the first. Now, if we compare the 2 arks, the one made from wood, acacia wood, and one made from shittim wood, the one Moses made was plain, and it is a symbol of humility. The other ark that was made for the tabernacle was covered with gold, and that refers to or symbolizes kingship and divinity. Now, Moses made the ark, and his name means drawn from the water. Water is a physical substance. And Bezalel made the 2nd ark, and his name in the shadow of Elohim. So it's more a direct relation to Yahweh than to something that's in the natural. So that just gives you the 2 comparisons again. The wooden ark, everybody saw this ark. The golden ark was always covered. Nobody saw it. It was in the Holy of Holies. Even when they traveled, it was completely covered. The wooden ark contained the broken tablets that Yahweh made and engraved. The golden ark contained the tablets Moses made and Yahweh engraved. So that inside there, it was like a combined effort. It was giving Moses more of an ownership of the commandments. So it's not just something he received and passed on, he was part of the process. So that actually gives it more value, hence the golden ark. And the tablets that was broken instead of the people, that show you that in comparison to the Yeshua that was broken and the tablets that's perfect, show you that the first tablets was basically there to make man perfect, and the second set of tablets is perfect, and Yeshua was broken, and he's the one who's going to then teach that perfect Torah from the mountain, as the prophecy depicts. Also, the two connections there is the first one, the broken tablets, has to do with Mashiach ben Yosef, the humble servant who was broken for us. And the golden ark represents Mashiach ben David, the king. So that's also the symbolism that connects there. And what's also interesting is that the wooden ark that Moses made was made prior to the one Bazazel made, because the construction of the tabernacle was after the meeting at Sinai, where they received the commandments. So there's basically 4 events that signify Shavuot. So you have 4 themes that you can use to celebrate. The first one is the voice speaking, the 10 words. The second one is Moses going up, coming down. They saw the people worshipping the golden calf. He broke the commandments. So that's the broken commandments event. And then Moses went back up. He made the commandments, Yahweh engraved them, and he brought them down. And that's the perfect commandments, or the second coming of Yeshua. And then the fourth one is the outpouring of the Spirit, which is Pentecost. So there's 4 themes related to Shavuot. Now the third ark, the word ark connects through the word that they use in Genesis 50 verse 36. And it said, they assembled him, embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin. And that coffin is the Hebrew word aron, which is the same word for ark. So his body was put in an ark. And Exodus 30:19 says, and Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, and Joseph had made the sons of Israel swear to do this. And then eventually in Joshua 24, it says, Joseph's bones, which the Israelites had brought up from Egypt, were buried at Shechem. So now we see where it started. Moses took it, and eventually they buried these bones at Shechem. And that means that they traveled with that ark of bones. So where was the most logical place? It doesn't say where that ark was carried, but you can assume, being Joseph, it's either his son or his brother from the same mother that would have carried either Ephraim or Benjamin. Now, I might put my money on Benjamin, just for the sake of the pattern. There's 3, then there's the ark, then there's 3, then there's another ark, and there's 3 at the back. So I just space it out neatly. And I think it's more of a responsibility of a brother to step up in the place of, for example, if your brother died, you should take the wife of your brother and look after her. In the same way, it's that authority that was just placed on the brother instead of the sons, also regarding the first, the birthright. So it's the same symbolism, and so I picture it will be at the back, but third from the back, so to speak. And the ark of the broken tablets, which Judah carried, which that verse where is it? I missed it now. In Deuteronomy 10:33, where they went out before 3 days' journey, that was Judah who went ahead, and they carried that initial ark, or the first ark. So that's just concluding last week's discussion on the 3 arks and the broken tablets. We did the yoke here last week. I'm not going to go there. I'm just going to finish off. The unlawful wife, Numbers 5. Oh, sorry, unfaithful wife. So this links in with the next Torah portion. That's why I'm going to just bring it up again. So basically it says, if any man's wife goes astray and behaves unfaithfully toward him, and the man lies with her carnally, and it is hidden from the eyes of her husband, and it is concealed that she has defiled herself, and there was no witness against her, nor was she caught, then the man shall bring his wife to the priest. So that's just a context of someone who heard something and there's no real evidence. So, and then there's some ritual things that they do in order to prove whether she was unfaithful or not. But that's not where I want to focus. I just want to focus on the word carnal. Now, carnal is the word shekaba, that means lying down sexually, carnally, copulation, and it also means seed. Now, seed is the Hebrew word zerah, that means scattering of seed, fruit, plant, and sowing time. So this implies that the
prosperity or posterity?
Where are you? I didn't highlight that, so don't read that thing. That's not what I want to focus on. I want to focus on the seed and sowing time and scattering of seed. So this implies that the unfaithful wife received the seed of a man of sin, and that she carnally laid with. Now, the seed of a carnal man, or where sin originates from, is found in Genesis 3:15, where it talk about the two seeds, the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. Now, the seed of the serpent is opposing the seed of Yahweh, and the seed of the woman is basically referring to Yeshua, the Messiah, and he's also referred to the word. Now, words are also seed, lies are seed, the word of Yahweh is seed, and in the same way, Yeshua, the Messiah, is also seed. So the two conflicting sources of seed come into play here, and we are exposed to both of them. So whichever seed you accept, whether you receive the seed from the carnal man, or the seed of Nahash, or the seed of Mashiach. Now what's interesting, Nahash and Mashiach, they add up to exactly the same number if you add up the letters in Hebrew. So they connected. The one is opposing the other. That's why anti-Mashiach is in the place of Messiah. So the anti-Messiah is an enchanter, is someone who can do miracles, who can do all sorts of stuff, just like the real Messiah can do miracles. That's why he can deceive people. He also can be like an angel of light. He can be like a prophet. He can manifest as any religious figure and deceive people. But he's got the seed of the serpent, which basically are mixed in with twisted lies that slightly taint the truth, that lead to the wrong outcome, so to speak. So the outcome for Adam and Eve, of course, is they lost the glory, they fell to a low state, and they received a body of sin in a fallen nature. So even tweaking the truth slightly can make you fall into a lower state. So it's important to purify the seed that you engage with, because that will elevate you. If you engage with the seed of the serpent, which is mixed with lies, it will pull you down. So the restoration process, of course, is only through the word of Yahweh, the truth. And that's why we make effort in trying to find the truth, to sift out the lies from in amongst the truth. Because the seed of the serpent, as I said, he has a religious hat on. You can't really recognize him unless you test him. But only can test him against the Torah. And unfortunately, a lot of Christians out there don't test it against the Torah. They test it against what Paul said, which is a translation, whichever translation they read. And there's so much confusion out there, and they can't really be restored because they still intermix the seed they receive from the man of sin. And that will pull them down. So that's the basic premise of the wordplay and those two words. Now, the one I want to jump onto, which also linked to the next Torah portion, is the hidden book. Now, in Hebrew, Numbers 10, verse 35 to 36, as you can see, it's got two spaces in there. Have you ever seen this before?
The Hebrew?
Yeah, Hebrew text.
No, not with the spaces in there.
of Numbers. Now, on a Torah scroll, that's what it looks like.
Okay.
Now, what's interesting in the Torah scroll, you should also refer to it, not one jot or tittle will be removed. Now, the jot and tittles are basically enlarged letters, smaller letters, letters with dots underneath, letters with dots on top. And in this case, inverted letters. Those two letters, nun, are the wrong way around. They're inverted nuns and they're larger than the normal text. So that draws the attention to the reader to say, there's something going on there. It's like having brackets to say, this is important. Now, what the rabbis believe is they say that signify a separation in that Torah cycle, or even within the Torah. So there's not 5 books, there's 7 books, and the book that's in the middle is between the two nuns. The two nuns. So what's in between the two nuns? It says, rise up, Yahweh, let your enemies be scattered, and let those who hate you flee before you. And then when it rested, he said, return, Yahweh, to the many thousands of Israel. So that's the passage that's within the brackets. Rise up and return, those two main themes that is signified there. But not only that, the symbolism of the letter nun, let me just jump to this, is depicting a fish. Nun also means fruitful, and nun also means seed. So now we have the connection with the seed that we discussed. There's fish. So in this case, there's 2 fish, and it also means to be fruitful. Now, the 2 fish is in the star constellation, which is in the sign of Pisces, which lasts for a 2,000-year period. That's what they call an age. Now, when one age moves to another age, they call it the new age. That's why the new ages were so excited about 21 December 2012, because that's apparently when it moved from Pisces to Aquarius, where the new age began. But the problem is the 2,000-year period, the gradual moving from one to another is 50 years. So it's not a day. You can't say 21 December 2012. It's in the region of there, because 21 December 2012, there was alignment of the planets and the sun and whatever. So that's why they pinpoint that, and the Mayan calendar also signified that. So I guess roughly sort of, maybe it began there, maybe it's somewhere in the middle, we don't know. But it's a 50-year period. But in Hebraic thought, 50 years depicts a generation. And in Scripture, it says the last generation, when you see these things, that's when the Messiah will come. So it's in amongst the 50 years, which is a generation where you move from one sign to another, where the transition will come, and Yeshua will come at that 50-year period, during that 50-year period, probably towards the end of the 50 years.
We also heard a teaching, the sign that the wise men saw in the heavens.
No, I'm going to be with, I'll discuss that one soon. Now, what's also known of between Pisces and Aquarius, they call it the age of the Gentiles. And that is the time between the first and second coming of Messiah. And that's the time where the Gentiles can come in. So that bracketed section there, the importance of that is that that's the grace period in between the two comings. And the two words, arise and return, are very significant. Also, the preceding verse and the verse after that is also very important. Now, the preceding verse is all about inviting the Gentiles, where Moses invited Hobab, the son of Reuel, the Midianite, and also Moses' father-in-law, to join Israel. That's just prior to that first noon. And after the noon, it talks about judgment by fire that will come upon Yahweh's people, which is signified by Pisces. Now, Pisces, if you look at the star sign there, it's also referencing the same symbolism that we read in Revelation of the bowls that's been poured out, the bowls of judgment. And that also signifies the theme of the second coming. So Yahweh actually wrote his prophecies in the star constellations. And that prophecy was there for 2,000 years, and the next prophecy will be there for another 2,000 years. In headlights, in lights up in the sky, to give us a warning. But we no longer look up, we look down on our phones. We don't know the stars, we don't observe nothing. We just are so dependent on technology, and we lost the wisdom. No, coming there. It's the next Torah portion.
Oh, can I just ask a question about the generation, well, you know, this generation, we'll see the coming of the Lord. I thought that related to the establishment of Israel. So in 1948.
That's, the bloom of the fig tree.
Yeah.
Or the sprouting of the leaves.
So how does that work out with the year, the number, like you said, 50 years of generation, is it?
Yeah. So this is roughly, it can be 50 to 70 years,
right,
because we live 70
so
years.
So
it's more or less in the same time frame. The last generation, so to speak. But what's important is that we can't set dates. So you can't count from 1947 and this is what it's going to be like. So it's just giving us a pre-warning sign. I just want to jump on there or just discuss the two words. I think that's still coming. The word rise up is the word kum. That means rise, perform, set, establish, accomplish, endure, which you endure enemy, strengthen, and succeed. Just looking at the meaning of the letters to explain this word kum more, the letter kuf signify the back of a head, and that's symbolism of repentance, turning the head or turning the back. Vav represents man, and mem represents water or Yahweh's word. So repentance of man is through receiving his word. And his word, of course, the first coming is Yeshua, as well as his Torah, because they're one and the same, as well as his spirit, because the spirit writes his Torah on the heart. So the three are basically one. So that is, that word kum is first found in scripture in Genesis 4 verse 8, where Cain rose up and killed his brother. So now we see this theme of the age of the Gentiles. What is happening there? One brother will rise up against another and kill one another. Now, in the Dark Ages, that was the most severe time frame of those things happening. It's a lot of anti-Semitism, a lot of conflict amongst different denominations, and even today, there's a lot of infighting amongst brethren. And even when I did the book of James, James dealt with infighting amongst the brethren. But James addressed the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, the 12 tribes did not exist in the time of James. It was only Judah, Levi, and Benjamin. So who is he referring to? He's referring to the nations, the Gentiles, because the 12 tribes exist out there, and they exist in the age of the Gentiles over a 2,000-year period. So the book of James is written as a timeless message to all Gentiles for the period of the age of the Gentiles. And everything he says there is applicable to us, just as it was applicable to his congregation that he addressed on that day or whenever he wrote that book. So that's just something interesting in the terminology and the real word play or the words he used when he wrote his letter, just to give us the context. Because in the back of his mind, he knew this, what we're discovering today, because they went through Torah cycles every year, and the rabbis were all over this symbolism and meanings and all that. We're just learning it now. So it's very interesting to start learning the things that they knew, so we can understand the New Testament better as well. All right, so this is the age where the sons of Belial. Now, sons of Belial means the unyoked ones, the lawless ones. Now, sons of Belial mean that they are sons, they are believers, but they are unyoked. Now, last week we looked at the yokes. So they're the ones who choose not to be yoked. So they say the Torah is done away with. There's liberty, there's freedom. Jesus paid for my sin. I don't have to do this and I don't have to do that. And they don't like the book of James as well because of that. So the sons of Belial is also compared to Benjamin in one of the other studies that I've done. And Benjamin the Benjamites were the ones who were nearly wiped out as a tribe because they killed the concubine of the Levite. Now, killing the concubine of the Levite, the concubine represents the Gentile bride who came in, who had access to the Levite, which is Mashiach. And they killed her, the lawless ones, during the age of the Gentiles. So that's a prophetic story. And they were nearly wiped out. So during this time, we have more than one mission or more than one purpose. Not only should we reach out to Gentiles to come in, but we should also work with our brothers, the sons of Balaam, the Benjamites, trying to get sight back to the blind because of their rebellion and unlawlessness and unyoked status. They basically became blind for the truth. They can't see it, even if you show it to them. It's very difficult. It's a spiritual blindness that is actually a curse that came upon them. There's one verse that said that Yahweh will curse them as a result of what they've done. And that's also evident in the 12 or the 10 tribes that were scattered. They lost their identity. And that's a curse. And that's also evident of sons of Balaam, the unyoked ones. Now, the unyoked ones became unyoked because of the seed of Nachash. That unlawful, it's not unlawful, unfaithful wife we looked at previously. So the seed that is out there is seeds of deception. And there's a lot of evidence of that Paul spoke about, that false prophets, false teachers. Yeshua spoke about it. I think John spoke about it as well. And the false prophets, false teachers from the previous studies we've done is because of pride. They kept their anointing, but they lost their authority in the body. And then they go off on their own tangent under the authority of the anti-Mashiach, the one who looked like Mashiach, but it's not him. Still have a religious hat on, fool everybody, but it's sowing seeds of confusion and mixing. And that's also what the Babylon system, the religious system that exists, is because of the mixed seed. Babylon means mixing and confusion. And it's that system that Yeshua will come and judge at the end of time that we read about in Revelation. Now, where am I? So our aim, I said that. So the day of vengeance, we read about, or the day of judgment, which signify the bowls, or Aquarius, which is a time frame that we are slowly moving into, is attached to the prophecy that talk about the favorable year of Yahweh. And this is the prophecy that Yeshua read in the synagogue to reveal himself as Mashiach. Freedom to prisoners, sight to the blind, liberty to the captives, and to proclaim the favorable year of Yahweh. And he stopped there. He didn't say, and the day of vengeance of Elohim, because that has to do with the second noon, what's coming after that. So that is the day of vengeance. And we are basically slowly moving into that. And we need to be aware of that. Now, the word return, which is also within the 2 moons, is the word shuv. That means to return, to answer, to deliver, and to restore. Now, this phrase starts with 2 basic lines. Return Yahweh, and then many thousands of Israel. So return Yahweh is, of course, the returning of Mashiach. And because Mashiach is Yahweh as well, that signify that. And that's in line with the prophecies in the day of the vengeance of Elohim and the symbolism of Aquarius. And then the thousands of Israel referred to the Gentiles that will come into their thousands and join Israel and become part of the house of Israel. Now, the word Yisrael means straight ones of Elohim, or righteous people of Elohim. So the church today, that people say we replaced Israel, is inaccurate just looking at the meaning of the word Israel. It means that you are now part of the righteous people of Elohim. And because the 10 tribes were scattered, they will be called back. Because in Revelation, there will be gates of 12 tribes, and you will enter through one of them. There's no denomination, there's no Presbyterian gate, Catholic gate, Baptist gate. It's the 12 tribes. And you will receive insight of which tribe you belong to, and you will align with them and enter the city through that gate at the end of time. So it's all about restoring, and that's what the meaning return means, to restore the house of Israel, to call back the tribes, the lost tribes, to unify them again so that they can enter the city as the entity of the righteous people of Elohim. So that's between the two moons. That's just my pictures from last time when I did that. I'm not going to go in there. All right, so this is my next week's Torah portion, this week's Torah portion for you guys. So any comments on today's Torah portion which stood up for you?
I just apologise.
That's all right.
Struggling to stay awake.
in, you don't
It
know.
goes
It goes in.
in.
I am very interested, but
And I'll
my
tell him later.
body's just not.
Now, this will be on YouTube. You can listen to it later.
Yeah.
That's all right. Anything that stood out for you on today's Torah portion?
So the gates that you're saying, entering in through one of the gates, so that would be the other 10,
It's all 12 tribes.
12.
There's 12
But
gates.
the house of Judah wasn't dispersed, so it wasn't.
Oh, they will enter into one of the gates as well.
Yeah.
Because the prophecy in Zechariah, I don't know if it's prior to Zechariah 14 or after that, it says that the sons of Judah will drink from the fountain of salvation, and they will weep for the one they have pierced, and they will cry as if it's the lost of the firstborn, I think. So they will realize who the real Messiah is at his second coming. Because they were expecting Mashiach ben David, but then Mashiach ben Yosef turned up, so they missed him. They're still expecting Mashiach ben David, but this time the king on the horse will appear. So that's why they will see him this time. And he will reveal himself to them, which is part of that. Yeah. So the context of this Torah portion is basically moving through the wilderness and going closer to the border before entering the promised land. Now, when you look at the picture I drew last time, you had Egypt, Red Sea, Mount Sinai, the wilderness with the tabernacle. Then you had Jordan. So Jordan and the Red Sea are basically equivalent. The one cut you off from sin and bondage. The other one is called judgment. Jordan means judgment, and it depicts the Great Tribulation. And that's where the Levites carrying the ark, everybody who walked with them, the waters open up, just like the Red Sea open up. And they walk through without being affected by the waters. So we will be protected if we are with the Ark of the Covenant, if we are covenant people. And all these Torah portions have some little messages to us that we need to embrace the Torah. We need to come back to the Torah, because that's what is signified by the Ark of the Covenant, the tablets inside there as well. So the people who do not walk with the Levites, they will probably swim through or whatever. Hopefully they'll make it, but they will be affected by all the things that's going to happen, because they don't have the safety of the ark with them. So approaching the border, so that is also in line with the themes that we touched on. The age of the Gentiles, Pisces going to Aquarius, the outpouring of the bowls, which is depicted by the Jordan River. And the verse that is in this Torah portion, Numbers 14:22, actually set the stage for this study. It says, and you have tried me now these 10 times, and you have disobeyed my voice. So during the time traveling from Egypt to the promised land, you have tried me 10 times. So basically they were tested 10 times and failed. Or sometimes they just made it through the grace of Yahweh, but there were 10 events that stood out. Now the 10 events that stood out is basically important for us living in the time of the age of the Gentiles, because we are between Egypt and the promised land, so to speak. in a prophetic timeline as well. So I'm just going to do 2 of the 10 today, because we're probably going to get stuck on the second one, which she wants to talk about, which has got a few interesting ideas. Okay.
Have you listed them all, the 10? Are they listed?
Yeah, they're listed here. I can email you that so you can read that on time. So Exodus 14 verse 2 has got the first test, and that was where the Egyptians chased them into the Red Sea, onto the Red Sea, where the Red Sea parted. And the context of that scene was Exodus 14 verse 2, which says, "You shall camp in front of Baal-zephon, opposite it by the sea." Now, Baal-zephon was an Egyptian god. It's the god of the sea and the god of the storm. And now, with the mixed multitude who joined Israel, there's probably some Egyptians among them that knew the symbolism of this place, which is the god of the sea and the god of the storm, because right behind them were Pharaoh and his troops, probably kicking up dust, approaching, and now they face the god of the sea, and the god of the storm is behind them. So they squeezed in between these 2 entities, or these 2 life-threatening situations, and they had to overcome. So the challenge or the test that they had to face, and I think they failed because they freaked out, there's probably some of them who had faith, was basically to trust Yahweh. And then Moses rose his staff and the sea split open and they walked through. But the storyline and the symbolism basically signify the typical test that we will face. There will be things coming from different sides, and it will all come from the enemy. And what are we to do? We have to trust Yahweh, and some of it might be persecution from different areas or directions, and there might be frightening situations. There might be some of the judgments that might instill fear in man and Yahweh's people as well. So we should just have faith. What we have in the back of our minds when we face these things, and they will happen, is that we have the wisdom and the understanding of the previous pattern that rolled out. And anything that's prophetic can repeat again. And it's always in cycles. So the pattern that exists in the first will also repeat in the second. And if we study the first pattern, it's a roadmap how to conduct ourselves during the second. So whatever we can learn through the stories in the Torah portion, build us up during the time of the Gentiles as we approach the border prior to judgment, in how to conduct ourselves when we face that terrible time, when we're going to be squeezed in, walking through the Jordan, just the tribulation experience. It's a 3.5 period of chaos. We've experienced some chaos to a degree with COVID-19, and it was actually daunting at some stages. It was abnormal. You can't even fathom why something like this affects the whole world. In the same way, the Great Tribulation will have events similar to this, and maybe worse, that will affect the whole world. So what do? Are you going to freak out, run around, be depressed, or lose your faith? But the pattern tells us there is an outcome. Yahweh will lead us through this. He will open it up for us. We will be protected during this. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
I just realised the Dalet means door, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The Dalet in the Yom Suf is the doorway through.
Yes. Yeah. So there's already a solution within the problem.
Yes.
The problem is the sea, but there's a doorway through. Yeah. He provides a way when there is no way. He makes a way when we think there's no way. Now the next one is the bitter waters of Marah. That's test 2, Exodus 15:24. Now Marah is connected to the Nile because they are opposites. The Nile River is sweet water, it's fresh water. They could water their gardens, their crops, whatever. They could drink it, bathe in it. But Marah, you can't even drink, let alone probably bath in it. So imagine traveling through the wilderness, sticky hair, sweaty, thirsty. I just want to, enjoy this water. And to their dismay, it was bitter. Now, bitter water has symbolism in itself. Water in itself represents Yahweh's word. Bitter water represents his word that has a consequence of bitterness. The prophet who ate the scroll, bitterness was in his stomach, the same symbolism there. And the bitterness is the consequences as a result of Yahweh's word. Now, consequences that's bitter as a result of Yahweh's word is always referring to judgment, a bitter situation, because they did not obey. They did not do the right thing. And I believe that there's majority of Israelites that murmured and complained. And Yahweh's bitterness basically came upon them as a result of that. And later on, we saw that a whole generation died out and the new generation entered because of their unbelief. Okay, so the two opposites, sweet water, bitter water. The sweet water is interesting. It's the word Nile. That's the word Yeor. That means stream, river, and also flood. Now, flood, this word Yeor, is also found in a prophecy in Jeremiah 46 that is specifically in the same time frame or prophetic scene of judgment, and also within the age of the Gentiles. He says, and the word of Yahweh which come to Jeremiah, the prophet against the Gentiles. So it's not a prophecy against Israel, it's a prophecy against the Gentiles. Why the Gentiles? Because it's the age of the Gentiles at the border prior to judgment. This is the words to us today that is signified by that in amongst the pattern of leaving Egypt and the bitter water and the test that we will face during the time that's depicted by the Jordan or the Great Tribulation. And he says, verse 7, who is that comes up as a flood, which is Yaor, whose waters are moved as rivers? Egypt rises, will go up, and will cover the earth. Now we see what the flood is. It is Egypt that is like a flood. So immediately you get the answer to what is the flood that came out of the mouth of the serpent in Revelation 12. It's the same pattern, the same time frame. This prophecy is in line with the prophecy in Revelation 12, and the flood in Revelation 12 is also the flood in Jeremiah 46. And the flood of Egypt that will rise up and cover the whole earth, when you look at the meaning of Egypt, it means sin and bondage. So there's a flood, which is a liquid, which is a water, which is basically the seed of Nachash, the serpent, which are words, similar to the word of Yahweh, but words tainted with lies that brings confusion, and they will flood the whole earth. So deception will flood the whole earth in the religious realm only, not even to talk about the physical of the secular realm. So it's in line with what we saw with the seed of the serpent and Nachash with the unfaithful woman as well. So they all overlay and set the foundation, and it's got a roll-on effect that reveal one thing on top of another if you just be sensitive to the time frames of the prophecies as well. So what do we need to watch out for is the day of vengeance of Yahweh is preceded by a time where there will be a flood like Egypt, words of sin and words of bondage that will go out. Now those words can also be words of authority in the sense of laws. They will create laws and say, you must worship the beast, you must do this, you must do that. And if you obey those words, you will disobey Yahweh. So we need to be strong, stand against the flood of Egypt, the flood of the dragon that will come upon the people. Now, Revelation 12 tell you why are these words spoken? Who are they for? It says, and the serpent cast out his mouth water as a flood after the woman. Who's the woman? It's the bride, the Gentiles who came to faith. And the flood is there to deceive the bride in order to cause her to go astray and disobey Yahweh, so they won't be restored. And then it says that he might cause her to be carried away by the flood or by sin and bondage. So that just is a beautiful parallel there to say why that picture is in the scripture. Now, the context of Revelation 12, if you read Revelation, is preceded by what Letty wants to talk about today, is the sign that happened 23rd of September 2017. Were you aware of this when it happened?
No, well, we didn't.
I think I saw
Didn't
something
see
on
it, but maybe we've heard about it. I don't
Yeah.
know.
No, I haven't heard
There's
that.
something about something coming out of the birth canal and the stars.
No, so this is a sign that can only happen on the feast of Yom Teruah. And the symbolism of Yom Teruah feast is Virgo aligned with Jupiter and also Leo. The sun is behind her and the moon is below her feet. And that can only happen on the Feast of Trumpets, no other time. So the stars, the description of Revelation 12 sign is the star constellation. Now, this star constellation also happened in 11 September 3 BC. You can go to Stellarium, whatever, and go back to 3 BC in 11 September on the Feast of Trumpets. This exact sign happened. Now, this is the Star of Bethlehem that they saw.
You know, when the wise men saw a sign in heaven, the star, that
It's a star constellation. It's not a single star.
One star.
And when they saw this,
And because they studied it back then, so they looked up and they saw, oh, this is the prophecy. And they know that the king will be born.
now what's notable here, it happened 3 years prior to the birth of Yeshua. This is a sign. So they knew 3 years ahead that we need to start packing. We need to travel and we need to go and find this king that's going to be born.
So they were looking all that time.
Yeah.
The 3 years since
They
when
didn't
they saw
just
the
back
sun.
up the next day, they were
Next
there
day, yeah.
for 3 years.
Yeah.
And the wise men got their wisdom from Daniel. And all the gifts they brought was inheritance of Daniel that was given to Yeshua.
I've heard that.
And it wasn't 3 wise men, it was 3 gifts, and there was many wise men. Yeah. So those are the 2 main.
So this happened again in 2017.
So what's interesting, looking at the pattern, nothing else, 3 years prior to his birth, this happened on the Feast of Trumpets. So let's see the date here.
So is that what the New Age, as they call them, that's the beginning of the Age of Aquarius? Is that what
No, that's 21 December 2012. That was the alignment of planets.
Right.
This is the alignment of star constellations. Yeah. So 2017 is a pre-sign, just like the star constellation alignment was 3 years prior to the birth of Messiah. This is a pre-sign prior to the birth of the second coming of Messiah. So we had a pre-warning 3 years ago.
So we're waiting for Yom Teruah this year.
Yeah, so I think we're closer than we are, or it might be another 3 years, 7 years, don't know. But this is a pre-sign. It's not a sign, oh, the rapture's going to be now. Or
And in saying this, we can't say that. I think I forwarded a YouTube video to you last weekend from a rabbi. Rabbi, who was he?
Elon.
So
It's got a long grey beard.
It's a message. Watch that, because this is a rabbi who I've never,
Who
ever
teaches end times from a
ever
Jewish
heard
perspective.
Is it
Jewish
the guy?
rabbi.
Is it
Did we
the
see that?
really long beard?
Yeah.
I think he actually sent us something.
Yeah, he spoke on
that
the
he
COVID.
said about the
Yeah, it's the same guy.
Okay, so this is a different message that he's.
Yeah, he's got lots of messages.
He's not the one telling all the Jews to go leave America and go back to Israel now, is he?
I don't know if it's him.
I don't know. But
he teaches, and so we've heard about Jews that say they believe in Messiah, that Messiah is a man. This one. No.
He said no. He's
No,
God.
it's-
He's not a man.
It's
Yeah.
not a man that they wrote for. So he's definitely not messianic like we are, but he believes in the Messiah that's coming.
And it's probably because of him that the Jews will come to faith when Messiah comes.
So,
Because he's got millions
he's-
or
he's-
hundreds of
it's not
thousands
that
of
he
Jews
teaches
following
what
him.
I was wrong,
Even secular Jews starting to come to faith because of him.
and how it relates to prophecies and even some Kabbalah teachings that they have.
Or Talmudic prophecies.
Talmudic prophecies, but still interesting. I mean, you have to eat the beans,
But maybe those rabbis were enlightened, like a prophet, and they uttered something and was
Do
written down.
yourself a
So
favor and watch. You don't have to spend a lot of time. I believe you have to spend time in Torah and things like that. But every now and then, I think it's
But
good
it's good to see. It's good to see how they're thinking anyway,
Yes.
because that's important. Because
That's right.
there are brothers and sisters. as
it is,
well. You
and
need to
Yeshua
know.
is from the tribe
Yeah.
of Judah. Surely he will start raising up people
Yeah.
from amongst
Yeah.
his own
Yeah.
to make them sensitive and aware of
Yeah.
his coming as well, even though they don't believe in, or they're not Christians or Messianic. He still will speak
Yeah.
to his
It
people.
must be shaking.
Yeah, and definitely if you listen to this Alon or whatever, and the people that sit with him, they are clued up.
So just looking at the pattern, we're 3 years later. This was the sign, Revelation 12. It's the only time it happened. It's not going to happen again. It happened only previously, 2,000 years ago.
And now it's happening.
So it's like the
Never
two
happened.
inverted nuns, these two signs as well. And the age of the Gentiles is between these two. So I believe maybe we are crossing into the age of Aquarius. And so we're very close to the border entering the promised land, or the times of the end. And with COVID-19 and the ridiculous things happening, we can see things are being set up to facilitate this.
It's like
yeah.
madness. It's
Yeah.
like madness is setting, isn't it?
You can see that the stage is being set for someone like an Antichrist
Yeah.
to rule.
Yes.
And he will rule the whole world.
Yeah.
Everything that happened will be global, not only in the Middle East,
Yeah.
just like everything's happened to us now. And all the laws are similar that's rolled out. So it's scary actually when you think of that.
Well,
But
this rabbi actually says it's Rome.
Romy, he said Romy.
Romy. Then he explained where Rome
But it's a
comes
prophecy in
from.
the
He
Talmud
says
that they
it's
refer
got
to Romy,
nothing to do with
which is
Catholicism,
the
nothing to do
Roman
with
system.
Christianity, nothing to do with Judaism, although Romy is in control of everything.
Well, you got the Pope going around trying to unite everybody together.
Yeah, of course you will. That's what it's about. It's
He
about
also
bringing
spoke
people
about
together.
the
First
really
Jesuit
was
Pope.
he also spoke
Yeah,
about
he also
the
said
popes.
about the black pope, the white pope. Yeah, he said this one is satanic. That's what he said.
What I mean, this present one.
Yeah, that rabbi said this, the present pope is satanic. Yeah. So first time in the history of the Catholic Church that they have
What
someone.
does he call him? He doesn't call him Satan. What does he call him?
Samech Mem.
Samech Mem.
Like Yahweh is Shin Mem for Hashem, Shem. They call him Samech Mem. So it's a similar sound, but it's not the right one.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Just this seems totally irrelevant, but just keep popping up in my mind. In permaculture, I just remember the principle that when you come to a border, can they come through?
No, on the outside's got a door.
My room, this, there.
You can go through and open up the outside door to the toilet. And they
Or you
come
can
in.
go through my room and open up that door. I've got many doors. Yes.
So
Yeah.
basically, there's a principle in nature that when you come to a border, say you've got a garden and then you've got some rocks, So when you come, the border between that side and that side, you get this change of vegetation and growth and a whole lot of weeds and things that grow up. And then on the other, it changes. So you've got this everywhere where there's borders. And I don't know, it's just making me think that we're coming to a different time now, and there's this, something different.
There's a crossover of some sort.
It's a principle.
And it's also a spiritual time frame that we're moving into,
Yeah.
a different age.
Yes.
Yeah.
An age, and there's a transition, and it's differences.
Yeah, you can sense it as well.
Yeah.
Even people in the world can sense it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
The new ages are extremely excited about this because they will be enlightened.
Yeah.
But they don't know the protocols before that.
Right.
They will have to come to faith to be enlightened. But yes, they can be enlightened.
Some of the new ages believe we are now entering the fifth dimension. We skip the fourth, we are straight into the fifth.
Well, there's that song in here, you know, where is it, the seventh house, and Jupiter aligns with Mars, and peace will guide the planets, and love will fill the air, or whatever. It's the age, the dawning of the age of Aquarius. They're all waiting for this wonderful time.
But it's the bowls first.
Well, it's not to be thrown away.
Yeah, even they are aware, so that's what I want to emphasize there. So it's not only us as believers, it's also the Jews and also New Agers and other cults that's sensitive. They can sense this change because they are spiritually sensitive, even though they worship another deity or entity.
You find that even a regular person who's not spiritual at all know that something is happening. And not just based on chaos around us, but that they know that something has to happen, we're moving into something. They just don't have the spiritual insight
or the explanation of it.
There's no structure that they follow that will explain it, but something in them can feel it.
So going back to the inverted moons, the second word, rise up, is found in Jeremiah 46:2. Sorry, I'm talking nonsense now. The connection with Jeremiah 46:2, where we mention the name Jehoiakim, that means Yahweh rises up. Now, he's the son of Joshua, which means Yahweh heals, and he is the king of Judah. So that's just interesting in the meaning of the name of the person mentioned in Jeremiah 46 as well. Also connects with that phrase, Yahweh rises up. Very interesting. All right, so no date setting. Nothing will happen, and I said that when this happened, when we discussed it, it was actually on the feast of Yom TORAH, where we discussed the sign with the people, and they were very excited when something going to happen. I said, no, it's not, because the previous sign was 3 years prior to the event, so just sit tight, it's going to happen soon. But part of it is, and that's what I say with all festivals, the feast is one thing, and it's a good thing. The most important thing of a feast is the preparation before it. So the feast we're waiting for, that we're definitely going to celebrate, is Yom TORAH. And the theme that we're going to celebrate is the second coming of Mashiach. And that's going to happen in real time, in your face. Not by sitting around a table, eating nice food, singing songs, and being merry. You're going to see it happen around you, all across the world. And that will be the full manifestation of that feast to everybody, and everybody will celebrate it together. Whatever that looks like. If you read Matthew 24, it talks about the spectacular event of the star, of the sign that will be from the east to the south, and also west to the east. Under correction, my own interpretation, but it will be a spectacular sign when he appears, and then he will gather his bride, and then the winepress will start. And that's what we discussed last time with the 1,000-year period, which I believe people will live for 1,000 years, just like prior to the flood. People
Maybe
will,
longer because, yeah.
no, they will live until the second resurrection.
Oh, yeah.
They will
What's
be
in
in.
the period of time where it says the man who wished to die but death will flee from him?
That makes sense. You say, oh, I'm 120, sure, I'm going to fall over tomorrow. No, mate, still got 900 years to go.
And living,
no.
living in the what's left of the earth at that time, which is nothing,
Yeah.
you know, destruction.
Yeah, watch the movie
leftovers.
Mad Max. Watch the movie The Postman. It's the best movie from Kevin Costner.
The post.
The Postman, which is extremely well portraying a time like that, where there's lawlessness, there's nothing. And I believe the wine press, 1,000-year period, will be like that. I think it's a 2 or 3 hour movie. It was
I might be. I don't know. We watched it years back.
yeah, but when I watched it, I realized that that makes sense, because it's just horrendous. It's terrible. There's no system. There's nothing. Every man for himself.
Mad Max is an old movie, isn't it?
That is a new one as well.
Yeah, I think I saw the new one a couple of years ago. I've never seen it before then.
Yeah, it's also a terrible time where there's no law. And, yeah.
Quite no fuel.
Yeah, so the lesson for us is when we see the birth pains, now that's just in context of Matthew 24, prior to the coming of Messiah, there will be birth pains, because the coming of Messiah is the birth. And the birth of Messiah is also depicted by the woman bearing a child. And then it said the dragon is ready to consume him. Now, if you look at the star constellation, I watched the video on this. It's actually another star constellation of the dragon that's aligning with, I think, Jupiter or something, that depicts the dragon that want to consume.
I've seen what you're talking about.
Yeah. So it's all in the stars. Might be good to find it again and watch it again. Because it's not, some of these things in Revelation are symbolic, and some of it is symbolism in the stars. And you need to understand the meaning of things before you can interpret them. I was wondering for years, what does the flood mean that comes out of the dragon's mouth? I didn't know it until I did the TORAH study. And then I realized, oh, it's Egypt that will flood the whole earth. It's like a flood. And the Nile means exactly the same word as flood in Hebrew. So the scripture explains itself. So for us preparing for this, I think we need to be mindful that even during the time of the tribulation, the dragon is still out there to get us. He will still be actively busy trying to deceive the bride, infighting amongst brethren, confusion, fear. People will adopt one another into in favor with the authorities, whatever. So it's going to be a terrible time. But in saying that, there's also hope. And we will be protected, covered. We need to be grounded in Torah. That is our only saving grace. I'm doing the last chapter of James chapter 5. And I'm doing an in-depth study on the word righteousness. And righteousness, first and foremost, it jumps to mind what Paul said, oh, we are made righteous by the blood of Yeshua. We don't have to do this, that, and the other. You're not saved by works, you're saved by grace through faith because you're declared righteous. Yes, that's one aspect. There's actually 4 aspects of righteousness, of which that is one. There's 3 other things that righteousness enable you to do through living righteously. And the best picture of that, maybe I'll show you the picture because I have it open, I think. Just open it up. No, I don't have it open. I can just open it up for you. Some store.
You just have overcoming righteousness, isn't it?
Hey? Oh, I don't know where I'm at. I lost my.
Just scroll past.
I've got it. I've got it.
Yeah.
So the best depiction of righteousness, there it is. Tzaddik is a battering tower with a battering ram. And that picture comes to life if you separate the tzaddik from Dalet Yod Kuf. And Dalet Yod Kuf means, what does it mean? Dayek. And Dayek means battering tower or a fort or a fortress. So you get a little righteous man sitting in his battering tower. And the purpose of a battering tower is to overcome a walled city. And a walled city represents bondage and the enemy. So how do you overcome bondage and the enemy? Through righteous living. You overcome the enemy. So that's one of the aspects of striving towards righteousness. Not only banking on the righteousness of Yeshua's righteousness, that's his righteousness you benefit on. You've got righteousness that you need to do yourself that you can benefit from. So that's an interesting thing. And then I'm still busy with prayer. And prayer is actually connected to righteousness. It's like a little triangle. Faith, righteousness, and that's a little steps I did last time with you guys. The steps of climbing holiness, of how your level of holiness is elevated. It's through the process of righteousness, engaging with truth. And the more truth you get, the more you know what is right. And if you do what is right, that is what means righteousness. And if you keep on doing that, that's called faithfulness. And that is what faith is. So truth, faith, and righteousness is a little triangle that produces holiness. And the more truth you receive, the holiness elevation just take you higher and higher to the level where you can actually stand before Yahweh without being consumed.
Think about it, in this time of incredible falsehood, lies, and deception, manipulation, the only way you're able to see what's going on is because of the foundation of the truth in you. And you can detect the lie because of the foundation of truth in you. People out there are just...
So what's the key to holiness? Truth. What's the key to righteousness? Truth. What's the key to faith? Truth. It starts with truth. Where do you find truth? Torah. That's it. That's the only source. Why is it the Torah? It's the foundation. A house can be built. It can be a wonky house. But if the foundation is good, the chance that the house might stand is good. That's the symbolism of the broken tablets. It's a little shack you nailed together with a few planks, but at least it's built on a good foundation. If you built on sand, no Torah, the house will be destroyed. So that's why.
He's righteous, so I don't need to be. That's such a trap, because it says be holy.
No, you cannot bank on your own righteousness to overcome death, the consequence of sin, and the ultimate restoration, which is life. But you can bank on your own righteousness to overcome the enemy, to overcome bondage, to break the walled cities in your life and in your family or wherever you are. So yes, your righteousness has a part to play as well, as his righteousness as well. But ultimately, your righteousness doesn't mean anything. It's little things.
What did you say earlier this week about the offerings that Abraham did? Why, you were doing this study and you said something interesting about the animals that were sacrificed. Cut in half.
Oh, it's just the animals were cut in half, but the birds weren't.
Yeah.
Why is that?
We want to do that.
Yeah, there's probably many answers. The first one to spring to mind is that an animal is the closest to a man because they both described as nefesh in Hebrew. Now, when Yahweh breathed into man, he became a neshama, which is a spiritual soul, not a fleshly soul. And animals are also referred to as nefesh. So the blood of a nefesh can pay for a nefesh, a fallen human. And only through this breath, ruach, you can become a neshama. So you need the blood and the breath in order to become a full Adam, restored Adam. So a bird, Birds are normally depicting the enemy, because Joseph's or Pharaoh's dream was the baker and the butler. Or it's not the baker and the, what's the other one?
The steward.
Cupbearer, yes. So the one who had the birds associated was, he died. So birds are normally also the ones who go and pick up the seed, the word of Yahweh. So birds are normally associated with the enemy. I've got one on pigeon and dove. The one's white, and the other one is it's mixed grey. The one eat pure seed, the other one eat whatever the one lives in the forest. The other one lives more in the city. So there's symbols in there as well. Yes, so that's basically it from all the topics I wanted to cover. Specifically, the main theme of the age of Pisces and the age of Aquarius, this specific sign that happened 3 years ago, and also the context of this Torah portion, drawing near to the border, which is the promised land, which is the New Jerusalem, and the border signify Jordan or judgment, and the tests that we're going through. I'll email you this. So I haven't done all the other tests, so test 3 and test 4 and 5, whatever.
So they came to reject a lot of it, because being in the New Age and astrology was rife, and we rejected that. So that's whole constellations and that they do speak, and yet when I was going through my Jewish conversion thing, my mentor talked about these constellations, and she said, totally Jewish, but she said that they are, like astrologers will use them and try and predict things and tell the future. She said they are there, but they're for signs for us.
There's a reason why they put them there.
Yeah.
I don't think to tell the future, but definitely for us to.
Well, I think it's it's you can use something for good purpose or for evil purpose, because even in astrology, right, they are incredibly accurate. They are accurate.
Yeah, they are, because it's Yahweh's creation.
But it's nothing compared to the real.
Yeah, I think the comment is true that the New Agers try to predict things.
Yeah.
They don't have the insight in Yahweh's Spirit to accurately predict things.
What did you say about the tree of good and evil? It's the knowledge of, say, for instance,
The tree of knowledge, it's the knowledge of good and the knowledge of evil.
So you can use the knowledge that you have either for good or evil. It's not the tree that there's good and evil. It's the same knowledge.
And if you think about
what do you use it for?
the symbolism of that tree, it's one tree that carried 2 types of fruit.
And love, you have a choice in to decide. Once you're aware that there's 2 different sides, then you have the ability to choose.
But we were not supposed to eat of that tree.
No.
And the reason is because that tree depicts Babylon, mixing and confusion. You can't have a tree with 2 types of fruit. It's not Yahweh's creation. It's not the way he does things.
So maybe we shouldn't be grafting trees with multiple.
One fruit, one tree. And that depicts Babylon as well. And the tree of knowledge, it's knowledge that uplifts, it's knowledge that destroys people. And because we're in the system of Babylon, it's because we ate from the tree of Babylon and we fell to a fallen state called Babylon, which is mixing and confusing. That's why they built the Tower of Babylon. And that's why the system of Babylon will be destroyed at the end. Because it's the fallen state that will be destroyed. And the tree of life will be set up and be available. Yeah. So there's just a little time frame, just overlaying. I think it was Joseph's dream. No, it was Pharaoh's dream again, with the skinny cows and the fat cows and 7 years of famine, 7 years of prosperity. So 7 years, that's why people say tribulation will be 7 years and the 70 weeks. And I know Michael Rood has something in that line as well. We talk about the week, which is a 7 year period. And then Daniel and Revelation talk about 3.5 year period. In the middle of the week. So in overlaying that with Matthew 24, you get birth pains and you get the birth. And the birth is actually called the Great Tribulation, and the birth pains is prior to that. Wars, rumors of wars, and all those things need to happen, and then the birth starts. And that's in sync with Yom TORAH trumpets and the star constellation line and what that means, and the moving from one age to another, and then coming off Mashiach. And then I also have the two witnesses there, or the two things that need to happen: stop sacrifices and image setup, to start the 1,260-day count. We'll probably start on the Passover and we'll end on the trumpets as well. Yes, so it's all about end times. So Revelation is actually within every Torah portion. If you really want to find it there, you will. It's there. I've done an interesting thing. I just started my walk discovering the Torah, and I was so excited about Hebrew. I went to a passage that was not meaning anything. You know, it's got the dimensions of something that was built. I don't even know what it was. And I just went to the next layer down, and I used the meaning of some words, and I just grouped them together and think about them. Oh, I can make a sentence with this. So I made my own little translation with it. And the translation was about the first coming and second coming of Messiah. Then I took something else that doesn't have any meaning to anybody. It's not a verse that you can remember and fight the devil with. It's just numbers and all sorts of things. I've done the same. And on a deeper level, I made my little sentence. It's about the first coming and second coming of Messiah. And that triggered me to go to the book of Nehemiah, of Nehemiah, how do you say it? Nehemiah, about the rebuilding of the city of Jerusalem. Because they had this guy together with that one, blah, blah, blah. We saw this gate and that gate. And I went one level deeper. It's all about the age of the Gentiles, all about the preparation of three distinct groups and how they need to prepare for the second coming. So the first coming and second coming of Messiah is underlining and embedded within the Torah. Always. You'll find a message there.
Even in the names of
the name of people. Yeah, from Adam till, was it Noah? Yeah, if you take the meaning of the names, talk about the first coming of Messiah. Yeah, so it's a matrix. It's a multidimensional matrix of intelligent, holographic images of truth, which are timeless. Yeah. Supernatural, timeless wisdom. Yeah. It doesn't matter which generation look at it, it will mean something to them. Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. No worries. So you guys are not here next week.
Yeah, we'll be away. And actually, we'll be travelling back on the following weekend. But we should be home by the probably 6 hours.
And that's going to be heavy.
Yeah.
Both will sit there.
So we'll just skip.
I'll probably not be here either.
No, we can skip next week. That's fine.